Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
Hey guys, this is your co-host Ashley Lunar Goddess, Gorilla Girl filmmaker and horror-loving cinephile. I'm just your average pun-making swearwolf that loves to explore the spookier things in life.
I'm your co-host John Thomas, paranormal investigator, super smartass, and film lover extraordinaire.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and all of my celestial pals? In today's episode, we'll be reaching for the stars to talk to Galactic Ambassador and channeler Dr. Lisa J. Thompson. Lisa is also a best-selling author, speaker, and intuitive transformation coach.
But first, a word from our network sponsor.
Are you looking for more awesome podcasts? Head on over to withoutyourhead.com for access to the Without Your Head podcast network, where you'll find a variety of podcasts sure to keep you entertained and coming back for more. Beautiful.
Look, I did it. I'm just kidding.
All right. Bring us back, Jonathan.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. Like Ashley said, we have Dr. Lisa Thompson with us. Nice to have you on the show. Thank you and welcome for coming on. Wow. Yeah, I messed that up. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for coming on.
There we go.
And welcome.
And welcome. There we go. Yeah, those are the words.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
I'm really excited to have you on. I love that you responded to my post talking about, hey, I'm looking for people with the specialty in these topics, especially in certain groups. You know, those topics can be a little bit of what? No one's going to respond to that, but I love that you did. And I actually got way more responses than I thought I would. So that was great. But yes, originally you responded to talk about the more of this like alien and UFO subject. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, so I have kind of a different background because I grew up in an esoteric metaphysical household. My mother was an astrologer. All her friends were psychics, witches, tarot card readers, and astrologers. And then when I was 13, we moved to Yelm, Washington to attend a spiritual school of enlightenment that was taught by a channeled entity from Lemuria. And so that background definitely solidified my spiritual life. But then I became a scientist. Like I went mainstream science, and the mainstream science and my spiritual world didn't really mesh very well together. And so after getting my PhD, having the tenure track professor job, I didn't feel like I could actually still be in academia because everyone thought I was crazy with the experiences that I had had my whole life with aliens and UFOs, and then all of the other metaphysical and spiritual things that I've experienced in my life. Anyway, so it's been a transition.
Can I tell you how much I love that you had yourself immersed in both worlds that people do see a lot of opposition from? Like, you grew up in a metaphysical household, which I love. I absolutely love that because I feel like that's the world I would like to eventually foster for my kids. Is just, this is natural. This is just a way of being versus, that's bad in the occult and stuff like that. So I love so much that you grew up in that it's just a norm and it's embraced and it's accepted. I also love that you went the science route. Did you find that they were challenging each other, or was it more so the circle of academia that challenged the metaphysical world?
It's really interesting because the more that I have gotten deeper into being this galactic ambassador, I can really now, like from a higher perspective, see how academia and mainstream science really doesn't have an open mind to some of this phenomena. And so while I was in academia, it was more like I would share my experiences with a few friends and they would be like, well, there is no such thing as extraterrestrials. You've never been on a spacecraft. You're making that up, or it was just a dream. And I know what my experiences are. And so when science can't really explain that, there is this challenge that can happen. And so I had to hide who I really was for many years because I had to be taken seriously in academia. And then for many years, I have been in mainstream kind of businesses. I was in the mortgage industry for 5 years after leaving academia. Then I was an interior designer and home stager for 12 years. I had a company. And so those businesses, I could not share who I really was. I had this kind of secret spiritual side and all of the experiences, but I had to put on this really, professional, put together person that is credible that someone would want to give business to. So it was only when I moved here to Hawaii 2 years ago that I was able to let go of all of the mainstream stuff and I could be fully my authentic self and really step into my role as a galactic ambassador and really like help people in the spiritual realm and all the other work that I do.
That's so cool. That's great. And I know that feeling. I know that feeling so well that being in specific worlds, it's not considered professional, right? It's an antithesis of professional to embrace the spiritual side of oneself if it isn't is aligned to like a specific dogmatic religion. If that's aligned, then people usually are a bit more like, oh yeah, okay, cool. But when it comes to the spiritual world or like the esoteric I like end of things, it's just like, oh no, you're not credible. What?
Right. I mean, yeah, if I identified as a Christian or, something that someone could wrap their minds around or also was, especially in the real estate world, that's totally acceptable. But, if you're saying, oh, well, I communicate with extraterrestrials and I channel them and I have these out of body experiences and, then people are looking at you like, okay, maybe you're a little crazy and not, how am I going to send clients to you?
Meanwhile, back in the old days, apparently it was divine to talk to things burning in bushes. Then it was all cool, right?
Right.
So, teach their own, I guess. So,
Yeah.
Galactic Ambassador. What is that? That sounds fantastic.
So it was just over a year ago that my husband and I, again, we moved to Hawaii 2 years ago. When we got here, we realized how much activity there really is on our island. We are on the big island of Hawaii, and there's so much UFO activity. And throughout the whole islands, but really our island has really massive vortex energy, very similar to Sedona and even more intense. It's said that the veil is thinner here, so the barrier between dimensions is way less, so you can actually see more craft. I'm going to say craft rather than UFOs, and people can have more deeper connections here. And so when we realized like how much activity there was, we decided, well, let's start a UFO tour business under my Mystic Manta business, my spiritual business. And so as a Galactic Ambassador, when we have our tours each night, I'm sharing information, I'm teaching, because I am always an educator, first and foremost. And then I also recently wrote a book on the topic, my newest book, Connection to the Cosmos. I have a weekly podcast that I do on the topic. I teach classes, I lead retreats. And so really my role as a Galactic Ambassador is to actually change the fear-based narrative that the media, government, and Hollywood has been perpetuating really since the 40s. The Roswell crash and all the other similar crashes like that. They have been trying to hide the evidence, change the narrative on that. And even though there is slow disclosure right now by the government, they are still putting this fear-based, like we have to perceive it as a threat. And it's not a threat. They have the technology that if they wanted to destroy Earth, they could have done so a long time ago. But they're actually our family. We have up to 22 different alien races in our DNA. And They want to actually help us to not destroy ourselves.
How do we know when it comes to the DNA? How do we know that we have that many different alien DNA components within the human species?
It's a great question because there are a couple of different people who have come up with different numbers. So one gentleman said 13, another one said 22, and some of this information is channeled from the extraterrestrials themselves that have been involved in that. And so when I say up to 22, I don't have an exact number that I know for sure. But what I do know is that and this might be weird for your listeners to hear, but I have a life as a genetic engineer I was a Syrian from the Sirius star, and one of my roles was to come here to Earth to actually genetically modify our human body to be able to hold more energy. And this was ancient Egypt time that we were involved in that project. And so I had this whole memory come back to me through a regression session that I did, and just fascinating. So I know that my connection with my Arcturians, my connection with Syrians, and some of the other ET races out there, that they have interacted with Earth throughout Earth's history, and they have been experimenting. And so the exact number, questionable, but I do know that we have evidence for that. We have a lot of missing links in our human evolution. We also, when they sequenced the human genome, they found places in the DNA that were kinked rather than smooth DNA helix. And so it looks like it was spliced in, just like if you were taking animal DNA or a plant DNA and doing some genetic modification. So that's a lot.
Really cool. No, I think that's cool. So when you say that you're in your past life role it was ancient Egypt, right? Was to help splice to enhance our capability of holding energy. Was
Yes,
that like an evolution step for the entire human species? And so
it
we're now
was.
carrying that enhanced energy.
Correct. Correct.
Sweet.
So, yeah, before that time, the body, and over time through evolution. So, my PhD is in evolutionary biology. And so over time, we have evolved to be able to actually pull more energy in, run more energy through our bodies, expand our consciousness. Before that, we were way more primitive. It was more of the hunter gatherer kind of existence, but with expanding our consciousness, we were able to really evolve in terms of who we are as humans and understanding the spiritual nature of our beginning.
So it kind of pulled us out of our like survival primal state of being to a more shifted up into that ability to connect into a broader consciousness.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
And at some point, we have a latent DNA inside all of us that will be activated, that will allow us to remember where we actually come from. Because, science wants to say, okay, well, we evolved from primates, and we do have primate DNA inside of us, but that is not our origination. And so, that's also where now the work that I do completely contradicts everything I learned as a scientist. And that some of my cohorts, their research that they did or are doing that's out there in the mainstream, it's just, if they heard me and knew I was talking about this stuff, they would think I was completely crazy.
It kind of reminds me of the Ghostbusters movie with the ladies when the one is trying to get tenure at the university and they find that ghosts are real and she's screaming into the camera and then loses her job. And it's like,
Yes.
but ghosts really are real.
Yeah.
That's almost what that reminded me of. But then they end up needing her, right? So, yeah, that's just a random tangent. I don't know. I feel like for me, when it comes to the accepted sciences versus I don't even know what we would call this, the more spiritual sciences, because I think there still is a science behind it that we just don't understand quite yet,
Oh, yeah.
that we're not capable of understanding. So I don't want to call it, I don't want to say it's not science. I think it's just not where we're at right now and being able to research. So I think at some point they probably will click in a way that we just don't understand quite yet.
Yes.
But one is so busy trying to disprove the other that we're not seeing the actual link.
Yeah. Well, quantum mechanics is the closest thing that we have right now to be able to explain a lot of the spiritual stuff that people experience, the metaphysical, including multiple lives. So even though traditionally the therapy that I do is called past life regression therapy, in the quantum realm, all timelines exist simultaneously. There really is no past, there is no future. And so I am trying to change that wording to be more parallel life regression. And that's how we're able to tap in. And we can actually change the outcome of those different lifetimes, and it can propagate through all timelines. So even though the Syrian and ancient Egypt in our linear human experience is the past, it's really not the past. It's going on right now. And we can tap into that. We can tap into the future in our, again, linear time. We can tap into all of it because we are all of it.
Wouldn't that break something? Like, I'm trying to, my mind is trying to, and I'm probably going to sci-fi dork in my head, but I think about, like, if we're all existing, our timelines are existing all at the same time or folded over, kind of like that blanket timeline theory. And if we activate so that we know about all of our other lives and our other originations, does that mean we're existing suddenly at the same time in all the different timelines mentally? What would that do to us? Or are we just capable of existing that way?
Yeah, I do. We are existing that way, but our consciousness isn't necessarily in each of those lives at all the time. So it's kind of like if you think of our soul fragments into these different realities, it's still us. And so we can pop in and experience things. But right now, we're having this earth consciousness, this earth experience where we are physically present. But, when we dream, we're going somewhere completely different. We're in a different realm, a different life, a different experience. And we can at will do that, but it's something that you have to learn or practice oftentimes if you want to do it consciously. We're doing it unconsciously, again, when we dream. But really, this is just one of many expressions of ourselves. And ultimately, we are all connected. We are all one. And we all link back to original source.
And so when we talk about the different origins, the different, is it constellation systems that were, when you were saying Lemuria, am I saying that wrong?
Lemuria. Lemuria.
Lemuria, yeah.
Lemuria is a continent that was in the Pacific Ocean. So it was actually culturally, it formed way before Atlantis did, but it was also a contemporary of Atlantis. And when Atlantis ended up, the Atlantean people destroyed their continent, it actually directly affected the Lemurian continent too. And so it said Lemuria sunk, but the water rose, so you could look at it both ways. And where I am in Hawaii, this is the mountain remnants of the Lemurian continent. So it was said to span from Easter Island to Hawaii, down through Micronesia, Indonesia, down to New Zealand. So a massive continent. And I have several friends that do remember their lives in Lemuria. And I know that I have had, multiple lives in Lemuria myself.
What's the significance of it?
Of Lemuria?
Yeah. Like because it seems like a very sacred, like when you're saying it and when people have referenced it, because I think we've heard it somewhere else. I feel like the word is triggering, like I've heard it before. So yeah, what's the significance?
Culturally, it was very spiritually advanced. And so the Lemurian people were being taught directly by the Pleiadian star mothers. So beings from Pleiades were here on Earth actively teaching the Lemurian people their spiritual basis, teaching them how to be in community with each other. And so as a civilization, they were very harmonious, very loving, very service to others, and spiritually advanced. They had very little technology, where Atlantis was the complete opposite. They were very technologically advanced, but not as spiritual. And so when they had nuclear weapons and things of that nature, because they were so technological, that's how they ended up destroying themselves, because they didn't have that balance of the spiritual to realize what they were really doing. And so when when we look at these two cultures, that is, I think, why so many people that were part of Lemuria, for many thousands of years, that they do have this deep connection, because it is a spiritual connection.
Okay. Now, have you, other than seeing the high level of crafts on the Big Island, have you had direct contact outside of channeling? I think you said that you'd been on a craft before, or did I catch that at the beginning?
Yeah. So the first conscious memory of being on a craft was when I was 15. And I was living in Yelm, Washington. And again, at this point, we were part of the spiritual school that my mother and I were attending. We were learning about higher dimensional beings, learning about extraterrestrials, fairies, other kind of what people would consider the mythical realm. And I ended up in a craft. It was at night, and I don't know how I got into the craft, but the craft that I was in was a smaller kind of shuttlecraft, and it was just me and my ET guide. Now, when I was in the craft with him, he looked very human. And so one question that I asked him in this experience was, are you human? You look human. And he said, no, we camouflage ourselves so that we don't scare you, because our form is quite extreme, compared to what you're used to. And so, we do not want to scare you. I remember flying through space in this craft, and it looked like the walls were completely transparent, where you could fully see out into space. So you could see the darkness, the stars, and then as we're passing through the different gas layers, you could see the beautiful colors of those gases. And then we finally get to where we're going, and we're inside of something. So when we arrived, I asked him, okay, where are we? And he said that we were inside of Io, one of Jupiter's moons. And so then he starts touring me around what looks like a hospital scenario. So I could see into these different rooms, and there were different Earth humans in the rooms being examined. Nothing scary, no probes, but all of the beings that were interacting with the humans, they also looked human, just like my guide. And that's actually when I asked him, okay, everyone looks human. Are you human? And he's like, no, we are not. And so when I asked him, okay, well, why are we here? Why am I here in this situation? He said, we're testing you to see if something happens to the Earth, if you could live in an environment like this or something similar. And at that time, this was in 1988. We were still in the Cold War. Nuclear, war was a major, major concern. And so it made sense what he was saying, that something could happen to the Earth. And so, fortunately it didn't. Then at the end of the tour, I asked to see what he really looked like, because I was always very curious, and I liked the weirdest kind of animals always. So I knew, I'm like, I can handle it.
You're my kind of girl.
That's part of why I became a zoologist, because I just wanted to study all the really cool things, the weird things. And so he changed form. The camouflage went away, and he was 7 feet tall. He had pure white skin, big dark eyes, and long red hair. And then he had what looked like triads tattooed into his cheeks. And so if you imagine a 7 foot tall, red hair, white skin, big dark eyes, kind of scary clown kind of look.
Oh no.
If that was coming down the road, on the same side of the street as you, you would probably want to cross the street or,
Yeah, that
go
would terrify me.
right. And so they, though, were completely benevolent, right? They were there to help us. And so that's why that disguise, that camouflage, because even if that was in your dream, a lot of people have fear of the unknown.
So
And
that's
so,
still super alarming.
yeah, one of the exercises that I have my students do in a couple of my different classes and retreats that I do, and it's in my book as well, is really look at some of the weirdest creatures on earth that exist. Look at them and understand how their form is perfect for their environment.
Yeah.
And when you understand that it's just okay, it's a beautiful thing. It's not scary anymore. There's no ugliness or anything like that. Every form is beautiful. And so the more that we can embrace the diversity here on earth, even with each other, with earth humans, the more that we're going to be able to embrace our extraterrestrial brothers and sisters.
Was that the only time that you recall being on a craft, or did you go again?
That's the first conscious memory, but there are other times, multiple times I've been on craft. Apparently, I was with that group a lot as a kid because they felt very comfortable. Like I knew them. I wasn't afraid at all. It was just like, oh, okay, like maybe family or friends.
Yeah.
And so I know that through my childhood and in my teen years, I had been with them a lot. Now, the other experiences of being on craft, I don't have as clear memory. It's more of kind of a foggy memory, but I have been on craft with other beings as well, like multiple types.
Why do you think that they choose specific people consistently? Have you ever asked that, or?
That's a great question. So, at least for this group with Io, the reason why I was chosen and why the various Earth humans, it turns out that that group has very little interaction with Earth, but they do have connection with the Arcturians. And it was 4 years ago when I met my Arcturian family. And what I now know is the Arcturians with this connection with this group from Io, they asked them to kind of watch over me specifically. Each human has a very specific frequency that they resonate at. And we can change that frequency with time, but my frequency matched theirs, which is what attracted me to them. Some of the groups some of the people that get taken, let's say by the Zeta Reticuli, they have soul level contracts that they agree to before they incarnate as human in this life, where they agree they're going to be part of the hybrid program. And I have several friends that are part of the hybrid program, have met their hybrid children, and understand this soul contract experience that they have agreed to. And so that's why some people get taken multiple times, because they did agree to it. That's just part of what they're doing as human, being part of this project that is actually spiritually for the benefit of the Zetas as well as Earth humans.
So what exactly does it mean to be a hybrid? Because you said they meet their hybrid children. So
So the hybrids, we're a hybrid ourselves.
Mhm.
We are not just human. We are all of these different beings inside of our DNA. But specifically, this hybrid program between the Zetas and humans, they are taking the best part of the Zetas, so taking their DNA, the best qualities of the Zetas, and they're taking the best qualities of Earth humans, and they are creating a spiritually evolved race of beings that are hybrid between the Zeta and the Earth human. And so the point of creating that is that in reincarnation, energy is neither created nor destroyed. So we
Right.
can keep changing form, right? And so the Zetas, they are developing this group so that they can reincarnate into it. And we as Earth humans can choose to reincarnate into this more spiritually advanced race as well.
How do I sign up for that? Sounds like it was a pre-contract. So,
Because perhaps in another life, you are a part of the program.
let's just speak it out and manifest it out. So, I think I saw on the UFO portion of the site that you use special goggles to
Yeah.
conduct the tours. Can you tell me more about those?
Yeah. So, okay. So 5.5 years ago, my husband and I, we took the kids on a spring break trip to Sedona, Arizona. And that is where we got to experience using the military night vision goggles for the first time. So I've seen UFOs. My husband's seen UFOs. I've seen orbs just, with my naked eyes. But seeing the night sky with the goggles and seeing all the activity that your visible eye can't necessarily pick up is just incredible. So they specifically have to be Generation 3 military night vision goggles. The way that the light interacts, basically, it amplifies the light in the night sky. And so, one of the things that I do on the tour is teach people how to identify the known objects that are moving in the sky, first and foremost, because not everything is a spacecraft. Airplanes and helicopters, they have very predictable behavior, as do satellites and space junk and shooting stars as well. So I describe, what that activity is. And because it is so predictable, again, as a former scientist, if there are things that can be categorized that really can be, we know what that is, then when you're seeing things that are operating outside of that known behavior, that's when it goes into that unknown category. And night after night, seeing, nonstop activity up there. We also have satellite apps, so we know that it's not satellites, but there are things that are not acting like satellites either, or airplanes. And so, really, things are happening not just here in Hawaii, but they're all over the earth. And the clearer the sky that you have, the better, to see, and more people looking up and really understanding that they are out there, and there's much more activity than I think people would ever think that there really is.
They just need to get the military night goggles Generation 3.
Gen 3, but each goggle, the base model is $4,000 a set.
Oh,
Yeah.
so not for the typical passive hobbyist.
No, but in my book, I give a few different techniques if you're just using your bare eye for how to see these as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned that you asked your ET guide to show their form. Have you ever had someone artistically do a rendering of what you saw?
I have not. That's something that I am interested in doing. I just haven't ever met, I've never had a friend that
Paired up with
draws
an artist.
people well enough. Now, I do have an artist that drew my Arcturian, but it was based on, a conglomeration of other images. And she created something for me. So she might be able to do it, but I think she does better if it's something that's already an image that's already created. Yeah.
I'd be curious to see. I know there's the new AI technology out there where, if you give a ton of keywords, it'll create an artistic image for you. I'd be curious to see what would be rendered with that using your very specific keywords, because you seem to have a very still clear memory of what you saw, rightfully so. And so it would be interesting to see what you experienced actually rendered out, whether through AI or an artist.
Well, I think so too. And there are different authors that have created extraterrestrial species almanacs, kind of guidebooks to them. And so I have looked in every book I have gotten my hands on to see if my group is in there. They are not. And yeah, so it would be super interesting. Now, the other thing that I about my experience. When I came back from it, at first I thought it was a dream. I really did. I'm laying in bed like, oh my God, that was the weirdest dream I've ever had. And the thing with dreams, though, we typically, lose memory, or we forget what the details were of the dream within the first 10 minutes if it's just a dream. Now, several months after the experience, I was reading Whitley Strieber's book Communion, and that book was about his experiences of being taken by the gray aliens. But at the end of the book, he's interviewing different people that have been taken. All of them have the same kind of gray race experience that he has, except for one guy. And this guy's telling Whitley that he was taken to a moon of Jupiter and told he was one of the chosen ones. And again, it was in the roughly the same time that I was had this experience. But Whitley made a little side comment. I hope it isn't Io. And when I read that, my body had the whole head to toe chills. I had tears coming down my face because that was my body's way of telling me that was not a dream, that was a real experience. So
Wow.
then I went and told my mom, knowing she would believe me. It's beautiful to grow up in a very open household like that. And so we happened to be, the school that we were a part of was high profile enough that the CIA and government had sent spies into the school to see what we were learning. And so some of these spies actually became real students. They left their government jobs and became real students. There was one guy who had been formerly very high government, who knew about the different alien races that our government interacts with and knows about. And my mom introduced me to him. I told him my story. He didn't know my race. He said, but we don't know all of them. But he said, you had a real experience. So to have that validated by someone who actually legit knew about different races and working with the government, having that validated at age 16 at that point was a huge thing for me to know, okay, no, I'm not crazy. No, it's not a dream. And to really plant that seed to be the Galactic Ambassador almost 35 years later now.
Wow.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like if our government is going to such great lengths to keep that quiet and out of the masses, whether it's to keep people from being mass hysteria or whatever the reasonings, it almost makes you wonder how people like that gentleman are able to just exit and leave and go talk about that. Probably because they assume no one's going to believe them. But
Yeah.
it's just, that has always fascinated me.
Yeah, well, and a lot of the whistleblowers on this that go on the different shows, like this, but also on the TV shows that used to be part of the government or part of the military, when they get out, they are free to speak about, what they experience. But I think that they can get away with it because the government probably thinks, okay, people are just going to think they're crazy or that
Yeah,
it's
no
not.
one's going to believe you.
Now, what's interesting though is that Mexico, Peru, and Bolivia are examples of countries that are wide open about this phenomena being real, and they've never tried to hide it and say it wasn't real from their people. And so there are so many people that experience it, and yeah. So at some point, we're going to be at a point here on Earth where everyone knows about it. They do want to be known, but we have free will here on Earth. And so for anyone that's a Star Trek fan, the Prime Directive where you can't interfere, that is real. There's really a galactic federation out there, and they have rules in place for Earth that they can't directly interfere, but they can interact with individuals, especially if we are inviting them.
Hmm.
If we ask to connect, then they want to connect. And that's part of what I help teach people and really help them do that.
Now, is that reciprocated like in other areas, planets, systems with life form? Like, hey, like if we suddenly become a species that can go further and find them, like you are not allowed to intervene. You leave
Yeah.
them alone.
Well, what's interesting, some planets are free will planets and other planets are not.
What?
So, yeah, so it really just depends.
How does a planet be determined like you're not free will? Is that how does that work? Do you know?
I don't exactly, but I do know all of this is just an experiment. It's a game.
Oh gosh. Just a big experiment. Oh wow. Have you met anybody that has similar origins as yourself?
I do, and actually, one of the things that people do ask me is, "Can you tell me where I'm from, or can you help me get the answer of where I'm from?" Now, I don't like telling people where they're from. I like them to experience it themselves, and so I can guide people into having that real personal experience. Um, but also, ultimately, we are all from the same place. So it's some people are like, well, I'm Lyran, or I'm Pleiadian, or I'm Arcturian. Well, I know, even though I resonate more with the Arcturians and I have an Arcturian life, I'm all of it. I am all of it. And so, um, yeah, that's I people want to know. And even when they meet their galactic family, it's just one of many family members that they have, because there are so many different higher dimensional beings that they're related to and that they are actually.
Because it all goes back to that origin, that's
Yeah,
original source code.
exactly.
Neat. Like, and I'm a total Trekkie, so I love it. I, although I love both wars and Trek. So,
Well, and I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And what's super interesting, Star Wars is based on real events that happened in the Orion constellation. It was known as the Orion Wars, and there really was like this dark empire force that wanted to control and all of that. And there was a group that were like the Jedi. They were called the Black League. And so, really, Star Wars is a real thing that, either George Lucas, either he was part of it and he's remembering his experience in it, or he's somehow downloading that information.
just channeling it somehow.
Right, exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. And so a lot of the sci-fi books and movies that people are doing are real. They're like, they are real things that exist.
What about horror?
Well, actually, that's a really good question, because there are dimensions where there are things that are lower vibration, that are, a little darker. Because we here, um, when we are third and fourth dimensional beings, like we are as Earth humans, we experience polarity. So we experience the light, the dark, the good, the bad, the positive, the negative. All of those things exist. Now, as soon as you hit fifth dimension and higher, there is no more polarity. Everything is just love and unity. And so when we're existing in these lower planes, these lower vibrations like we are, then absolutely there are the things like the horror movies that people can experience.
That come through.
Yeah, and that do come through. And one of the things that my Arcturians that they are teaching through me to my clients, but they're always reminding me, is we have the ability to determine what vibration we are resonating in. So if we elevate our vibration and we're living in a state of joy, we're coming from a place of love, we're in play, we're lighthearted, then we're naturally in that higher vibration, and we can only have what we are in our surroundings, whether that is humans or extraterrestrials, dimensional beings. And so anyone who has a lower vibration, or they're just really dwelling in their negativeness and being a victim, that's what they're going to experience. That's what they're going to attract.
It's so funny you mentioned that on a, you know, in when we're talking about the world of like extraterrestrial and dimensional beings, because we also heard that same exact thing from a medium that does tarot. And, we talk about, hey, and like Ouija boards, it's, hey, you can potentially draw in things that are not so great. And she said the same thing. If you're vibrating low, that's
Yeah.
what you're drawing in. You got to raise your vibrations before you try to channel anything, before you try to open the door to anything, because you're going to bring back exactly what you're vibrating out.
Yep.
So it's so fun to hear that repeated, right?
Yeah. And coming from multiple sources and multiple experiences, so someone like a medium sees other, they see dead loved ones, or maybe angels or other things, maybe demons. They all exist, and they all have their role. And so even if someone is stuck in this like lower vibe, negative vibration, they don't have to be stuck. They have a choice. They can raise their vibration. They just need to know that they can. And we again, we all have free will. We have every choice available to us. So what choice are you making? What do you want to focus on?
I love that. That could be like the last part of, a book. What choice are you making? I saw on your site you had mentioned that there is an underwater UFO base. Can you tell me more about that? How do you
Yeah.
know about it?
Okay. Well, there are a bunch of underwater bases, alien bases, in lakes and the oceans. And so we have a suspected underwater base off the southern part of our island. Again, I'm on the Big Island, and we see around the island, and actually all the Hawaiian Islands, people have seen craft coming in and out of the water. So those are trans-medium craft, able to go from air to water, back to air very easily. And but the most common activity is down at South Point, which is the southernmost part of our island and of the United States. So that's where the most sightings occur of the craft coming in and out of the water there. But there was a mass sighting January of 2021 over on Oahu, so right outside of Honolulu, where people got it on video. It was all over the news. And what they saw was a big blue orb, cigar-shaped orb, and it was up in the sky, and then it started moving, and then it went down into the water. And some of the news sources were like, it crashed into the water. Well, it didn't crash. It purposely went into the water. And, so that's just one example of that kind of activity. But, there's a lot of sightings in Lake Titicaca, in the Great Lakes, in Russia, all over the world, even like outside of Puerto Rico, craft coming in and out, off Catalina Island, California. A lot of underwater and craft that are coming in and out.
I mean, that would almost make sense, right? Because as humans, we don't have a lot of. I mean, our cameras are everywhere on
Yeah.
mainland, above mainland drones, but we really don't have a lot of coverage in the ocean. So
No.
that's like our our blind spot. So it
Well,
would make sense if you're going to have big bases, hide it in the water.
completely. And I mean, and yeah, to that point, like so I'm an evolutionary biologist, but I also was a marine biologist. And so we have only explored maybe 5% of the oceans. Like there's so much we do not know about what is down there. And so it's a perfect place to hide.
That makes sense. They're like, man, they're watching the skies too much. Check it in the water. So where does the manta come into play? I know it's a mystic manta, right?
Yes.
So what is this special symbolism of the manta?
Okay, well, manta rays are the most highly evolved of all of the fishes. So they're advanced sharks. They're flat sharks, which a lot of people don't know that stingrays and manta rays are sharks. But they are truly higher dimensional beings. They exude so much love, and they actually have brain warming, kind of like a mammal does, and so they have amazing memory. They have consciousness. and they no longer have a stinging spine. They don't have teeth. So they're these gentle giants that we can learn so much from. And they're my number one spirit animal. So that's why my company Mystic Manta.
That's lovely. It almost makes you wonder because I always ask, like, in terms of evolutionary biology, right? Why humans are the one that had the biggest sleep because every animal's kind of evolved over time, but if they are all pacing at a different pace. And we had this crazy leap, and it's pretty intense. It's an intense speed that we went. And so it's just like it makes you wonder what other species may be getting that kickstart at some point. Maybe it's the manta rays.
Them and the octopus. Octopus are true aliens as well. So, and the cetaceans. So octopus, sharks, whales, dolphins, they come from water planets that are not of Earth. So that's where they originated from. And mermaids exist, and they come from a water planet. So
But do they look like the mermaids that we see on TV?
they're not like Ariel. No, they're not. They're definitely much more fish-like, I would say. And I actually have a life as a mermaid on a planet around Sirius as well, and I describe that in this book. But some of my future books will have other experiences that I have. Some of the clients that I've had in my regression sessions, they have been animals or trees, or I had one recent one that was Sasquatch. Fascinating, fascinating. So, like, and some people are just energy, some people are non-Earth humans, all of it is a potential.
I think at some point I'm going to be brave enough to do like a regression.
It's
They're going to be like, you were a rabbit. You were a little bunny. And I'm like, well, that makes so much sense. He just nods. John's like, yeah. John, I know I've been talking a lot. Do you have any questions?
Honestly, I missed the last 20 minutes because my computer froze, so I can't wait to listen to this episode like everybody else.
I can't wait to listen. I know. I feel so badly for you.
It's all right.
So you offer retreats and galactic experiences. What do those entail?
So I have a couple different retreats. One is more of just a spiritual retreat where we do deep dive healing. So if someone has blockages or limitations that they want to overcome, that's part of that retreat experience is healing work as well as having fun playing. We need to get back to our childlike lightheartedness because that is the best way to manifest our reality, to really create our reality. But then the galactic experience, that is more of really learning different modalities and practicing those modalities to enhance the clair abilities, telepathy, remote viewing, and things of that nature, because that is how we can enhance. We have these built-in superpowers as humans. We have all of this available to us. We just have to know how to do it. And so that is some of the stuff that I learned at that spiritual school. Some of these things that, CIA was interested in. Okay, what are they learning? And so using these techniques really helps our connection with our spirit guides, our angels, our extraterrestrial brothers and sisters, whatever it is that you want to connect with. We can even use it to talk to our animals, animal communication, plant communication, a lot of things that galactic retreat experiences. And then people have the ability to also connect with their galactic family when I lead them through journeys. And they get to look at the night sky with the goggles and have experiences like that.
And who doesn't love looking at the night sky on a clear night? I'm sure it's beautiful in Hawaii.
Yeah.
What does human design entail? I know that's mentioned on your site.
Yeah, human design, it's a modality that combines Western astrology, the Hindu chakra system, Kabbalah tree of life, quantum mechanics, and genetics. And
you put a lot of big disciplines together.
Well, and I didn't create it myself. A man named Ra Uru created it, and it was a channeled system that came through him over an 8-day period. And what it does is it gives you a blueprint of who you were born to be in this specific earth life. But it gives you information also what you're bringing in, like what epigenetic, um, karmic stuff you're bringing in from your family lineage, and gives you information about how you get your true answers. Everyone gets their answers, their yes and no's a little differently, but it's a system that really, when you understand how you operate, you flow much easier with the universe. You actually also, when you understand how other people operate, you give them much more grace. You can speak their language, like you know how they operate as well.
I see a lot of beautiful decks on your site too. Did you design those yourself or did you partner with someone for that?
I created all of my oracle decks. So I have 8 different decks. 7 of them are oracle decks. The 8th one is an affirmation deck specifically. But I created them based on either related to different books that I've written or my obsession with animals and I have one on flowers. I have one about Hawaii, the Aloha Spirit deck, and then my newest one is the Connection to the Cosmos, which actually is my favorite deck at this moment because that one actually gives these different modalities I was talking about. It gives little specifics on how to practice those.
Oh, that's neat. The Sacred Soul Love affirmation cards, those are beautiful. I was taking a peek at those, but the Connection to the Cosmos is also it looks like a really beautiful deck as well. I love the figure silhouette, opening up to the stars. So that's just these are all beautiful decks. For this spirit school that you went to, is that still something that's currently open?
Okay, so it's called the Ramtha School of Enlightenment. And I have not been a student there for a good 16 and a half years. Um, as far as I know, it is still in operation, but I do not know whether Jay-Z Knight, who channels Ramtha, I don't know if Ramtha is still coming through her or if it's just being taught by other facilitators, the
Ah,
information that it used to teach.
got it.
Yeah.
This is really awesome. Oh. I loved like this entire conversation that we've had, and I feel like I could just keep going on and on and on. How do you feel about crystals?
Well, actually, I love crystals and I incorporate them. So, as yeah, I'm also an artist. I grew up very creative, and so I used to draw animals. I create jewelry. Now I'm creating these beautiful crystal hanging art pieces. I used to dance. So, any kind of creativity, that's actually a form of channeling. So, people channel all the time without even realizing it. And so, for me, when I'm working with the crystals, they're telling me how they want to be used, and whether it's a piece of jewelry or a piece of art. And they do bring energy into a space and to us specifically.
I feel that so much when you said anything can really kind of be a channeling moment because I feel like in my journey, I've struggled. John laughs because I'm like, I can't meditate. I don't know how to visualize. I don't know how to. But the times that I have felt like I am completely just locked in a separate space, like I feel like I'm outside of my body, but completely inside of myself, if that makes sense, has been when I'm moving, like whether I'm on an aerial apparatus or whether I'm doing yoga. And it's just like, I don't know where I went in that moment, but wherever it was, I felt completely me and completely out of me all at the same time.
And that's the interesting thing about meditation too. A lot of people think it's like you have to be still with your eyes closed and either your mind completely empty or it's you're doing mantras or something. There's so many different ways to meditate, right? So
Yeah.
many. It's not limited.
I can't wait. I hope to see you post your crystal art because or pieces because I love stones. I love seeing them incorporated into all of the things. Even if it's just incorporated like in nature, going on hikes where there's just a lot of stones present, like Sedona loved being on all the different trailheads with all of the massive stones of the different colors, and it just absolutely captivating and beautiful.
Yes. Well, and because each piece I do is one of a kind, I actually don't put them on my website ever. I do put them on Facebook though, on my business page and a couple of my group pages, because it's easier to, rather than having to go through the effort of putting one thing on the website and then it gets sold and then I have to go back and take it down. So yeah.
So then that's a perfect transition to Dr. Lisa Thompson. Where can people find information about all that you offer?
Well, so I have two different websites. One is drlisajthompson.com. The J stands for Jane. Dr. Lisa Thompson was taken already, so I had to put that middle initial in. You can also get there mysticmanta.com, goes to the same place. And then I have bigislandUFOtours.com. And then I am also on Facebook, a little bit on Instagram, and then my YouTube channel is Connection to the Cosmos with Dr. Lisa Thompson.
Which is your awesome podcast, right?
Yes.
We will be sure to like and subscribe to that phenomenal podcast, as well as all of our listeners. Please head on over if you're very interested in the things that Lisa said, because I imagine she has that more in depth on her podcast than we were able to get here. And that's the one thing when we bring people on, an hour just barely scratches the surface on so many of these. And so we appreciate that you come and try and fit all of that into the time that we have you. Would you be open to coming and talking to us again in the future?
Yes, I would love to.
That would be so awesome. I love your energy. You just, you do vibrate at a high vibration.
Thank you. I will accept that. I receive it. Thank you.
All right, John Thomas.
Yeah, go figure. I'm here for the end. That's good though.
Do you want to bring us home, John
I
Thomas?
do. Thank you again, Lisa, for joining us. I again can't wait to hear the episode. The computer issues are a pain. And thank you to all of our listeners for listening to this episode of 3Haunted Podcast with your host. I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
And if you have any questions, comments, or episode suggestions, please feel free to email us at 3hauntedpodcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so already, please like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media. You don't want to miss one crazy moment.
Until next time.